Well, first time for everything. Yes.
What makes you think this is my first time?
The James Bond franchise has produced hit after hit over the last 50 years. It's created some of the most thrilling stunts, iconic lines,
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
and memorable characters in the history of cinema. The franchise also has made some extremely notable missteps over its lengthy history, though, and how it failed Raoul Silva might be its cardinal sin.
What is this?
Javier Bardem's Raoul Silva is introduced in Skyfall, lording over an abandoned island that he has turned into a hacker sanctuary. Clad in a tan jacket with bleached blonde hair and a pronounced underbite, Silva monologues in a politely terrifying way while slowly approaching Bond. This is literally one of the best Bond villain introductions ever put to screen. Silva tells a parable about how, when he was a child, his grandmother devised a system of trapping rats. The genius of this vignette is that Silva isn't actually talking about hunting rats. He's explaining the pressure cooker that has created Bond and himself, the cauldron that transformed both of them into the killers they are.
But now they don't eat coconut anymore. Now they only eat rat.
The idea of a doppelganger or dark mirror image of Bond is a trope that has existed within the franchise, dating back as far as Red Grant in From Russia with Love. However, Silva just might be the perfect distillation of everything compelling about this reoccurring archetype. But before we examine him in too much detail, let's back up. Casino Royale, the film that rebooted the Bond universe. It was met with rave reviews, a massive box office haul, and it firmly cemented Daniel Craig as the new face of 007. Bucking the trend of having a franchise of one-and-done adventures, Quantum of Solace was a direct continuation of the events of Casino Royale. The film literally picks up moments after the finale of the previous movie. Released in 2008 during the writer's strike, the film was met with widespread disappointment.
Pull him in, or the Americans will put him down.
The film also introduced a new big bad of the franchise, Quantum, a shadowy organization pulling the strings of global affairs. As if this wasn't enough drama for the franchise, MGM, the longtime home of the series, was having financial issues. Despite declaring bankruptcy, the studio was eventually able to pull itself out of a tailspin. However, this process caused a lengthy delay in the development of Daniel Craig's third outing as Bond. While rumors of an adaptation of the Bond novel Carte Blanche or a reimagining of Dr. No spread like wildfire, the story for Bond 23 that was originally developed for the film was titled Once Upon a Spy. This plot involved M being blackmailed by a Russian oligarch who she had engaged in an affair with while she was stationed in Berlin during the Cold War. The finale of the film would have seen Bond killing M against his will. While this direction started to gain some traction internally, the hunt for a director began, one which eventually settled on Sam Mendes. Mendes didn't like the idea that Bond killed M, thinking that audiences would not respond well to this. So they set about constructing a new story in order to build a villain that would be worthy of the idea of dispatching the series' long-running matriarch.
Well, I hope it was worth it.
After briefly attempting to crack an idea titled Nothing is Forever, a man with the golden gun-esque story that would have seen Bond suffering from amnesia, these two ideas were merged together and evolved into the beginning stages of what would become Skyfall. Raoul Silva is without a doubt one of the best Bond villains of all time. While the Craig run of movies is a bit mixed in terms of quality, his tenure with the character boasts two of the franchise's high points in Le Chiffre and Silva. The thing that really distinguishes Silva is that he's both very similar to previous Bond antagonists and also completely new. He's a mastermind, a physical threat, and an obsessive compelling enough to rival Bond, but he's also deeply flawed, emotionally broken, and wants the approval of M. Drawing upon themes of abandonment, patricide, and betrayal, the character has an emotionally raw core that is unlike any other Bond villain. In the previously discussed scene, he delivers a long monologue which is a key insight into his character. He's a man who feels betrayed by the system and has been evolved against his will into something monstrous. On the surface, Silva is a remix of Alec Trevelyan from GoldenEye. He's a former Bond ally who has decided that his motivations lie elsewhere. Silva is a former Section H agent who worked as a cyber terror specialist and hacked into the Chinese government's top secret files. When he was eventually captured, M allowed the Chinese to take him prisoner in exchange for the return of 6 captured MI6 agents. This is a great motivation on both sides. Audiences understand why he was punished and why M allowed the prisoners to be exchanged. It's morally gray on both fronts. Skyfall explores the difficulties of being M and how sometimes there just isn't a right call, and you need to make a decision and live with it.
Regret is unprofessional.
The fact that the viewpoint of the film is empathetic towards both of the characters is what really makes them work. This film is personal. A perfect example of just how personal this film is willing to get is the interrogation scene where, after he's been caught, he confronts M about the ramifications of her turning him over to the Chinese government, how they tortured him for 5 months, and when he finally reached the end of his rope and attempted to use his cyanide molar, he survived. Silva is ostensibly what if Frankenstein's monster was a Bond villain. He blames her for his creation, and he's using his considerable talents to make her life miserable. He doesn't just want her dead, he wants her to suffer, and then he wants to be the one to kill her.
You're hurt. You're hurt. What has he done to you?
But here's where the franchise failed him. Like so many Bond antagonists before him, they killed him. Silva was such a compelling villain that he easily could have been elevated to a reoccurring bad guy, a Blofeld or Jaws for the new Daniel Craig era. Instead, they chose to keep him as a one-off villain, which frankly is the best decision for the film in question, but not for the franchise overall. Just one movie later, 2015's Spectre, revealed that Silva was a member of the beloved antagonist group Spectre. The only problem is Spectre, the film, made key missteps with Blofeld. They retconned that he and Bond were adoptive brothers, one of the dumbest and most ludicrous twists in the modern cinematic landscape, and they positioned Silva, Chiffre, and Dominic Green all as members of Blofeld's inner cater, and that they had been working at his behest from the beginning. It's such a shame that Eon Productions felt the need to do this to the Bond villains of the Craig era. It does them and the whole franchise a disservice, especially because one of the best aspects of Skyfall is that it firmly recontextualizes the Craig Bond within the original continuity. Remember, Casino Royale and the Quantum of Solace were intended to not exist within the series. They were their own standalone thing. However, Skyfall very subtly places Craig's Bond back within the original continuity. From people constantly talking about how old Bond is, making direct references to things that had happened before, like Q mocking the exploding pen from GoldenEye.
Were you expecting an exploding pen? We don't really go in for that anymore.
Or Bond's Aston Martin DB5 from Thunderball playing a prominent role in the story. Raoul Silva is probably the most interesting and complicated Bond villain of the modern era. From his obsession with M to his flirting and brotherly hatred of Bond, the character has layers that few villains in the storied franchise are able to achieve. He has a visual signature, a keen intellect, and multiple iconic lines in the film. It's not by accident that Skyfall is looked back on as a classic. The way Mendes and the writers evolved the idea of a Russian oligarch attempting to kill M into a story about a long-lost son hell-bent on revenge is endlessly compelling. Is it greedy to ask for more stories that center on Silva? Maybe, but when you look at the villains of the subsequent 2 films, it's understandable why people love him so much. And well, that's all we have for this episode. What do you think? Who are the other Bond villain greats? Let us know down in the comments below, and as always, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more Nerdstalgic videos like this.